Hello everybody, this is the second part of a series of videos on Maya's modeling toolkit. In the first video we looked at the mesh tools. In this video we'll be taking a look at the components tools. And for this demo I will create a polygon sphere. As you all know, polygon objects are composed of components, vertices, edges, and faces. I'm going to right-click on the object and switch to face mode. And I'll select a single face on this mesh. Let's look at Extrude. When I apply the Extrude on this single face, I get a pop-up and my manipulator handle changes. Grabbing the green or red arrows is not very effective. I want to grab the blue arrow, or the Z-axis. Extruding adds new geometry to your mesh. And the default behavior is to extrude along the component's normal. Notice that I can also scale my extrude. Clicking on any of the three scale handles will create a fourth handle which I can scale uniformly. And by increasing the divisions value in the pop-up, I can add more geometry along the length of my extrude. I'm going to select another face and do another extrude. Remember that using the blue arrow will extrude along the component's normal. But if I click on this toggle, my manipulator handle changes. It toggles between extruding on the normal and extruding to the world. Notice how extruding to the world gives me a different result. Let's take a look at that again so that it's perfectly clear. I'm going to select another face and do another extrude. I'm going to click on the toggle and then extrude it to the world on the y-axis. Not only can you extrude single faces, you can also extrude multiple faces. I'm going to select this first sphere and change to component mode, face mode, and select the faces on the top half of the sphere. Moving on to the second sphere, I'm going to do the same exact steps, but with one slight difference. Once again, I'm going to go to face mode and select the faces on the top of the sphere. I will hit the extrude button and pull it out on the Z-axis. But this time I'm going to check off Keep Faces Together in the pop-up. Notice how each face is its own separate extrude, which I can scale. Moving on to the third sphere. Once again, I'll go to face mode and select the faces on the top half of the sphere. And I'll do another extrude. But this time I'll click on the toggle, which will switch the extrude to be along the world coordinates. One other thing to be aware of with the extrude tool is that you can also select faces and extrude them inward. And another thing to be aware of is that extrudes can also consist of just a scale. Most of the time when you use this tool, you'll be extruding faces. However, it's also possible to extrude other components such as vertices. Notice that the pop-up provides some values which you can adjust to change the look of your extrude. Here I've extruded a single vertex. Let's see what happens if I extrude multiple vertices. Edges can also be extruded, but you should be a little careful with this one. I'm going to select these 8 edges and extrude them upwards. While Maya will let me do this, this is a little bit problematic. In fact, I would avoid doing this. In a later video, I'll go over why this is problematic, along with some other common problems in 3D modeling. There's really nothing wrong with extruding edges, but you have to do it this way. I'm going to get rid of these faces and then select the edges and then extrude them. This method is perfectly fine. And in fact, I can fix the other example simply by deleting the faces on the inside. We'll take a look at another component tool now, the bevel. To illustrate this, I'm going to create 2 polygon primitives, a cube and a cone. Selecting the cube, I'm going to go to the Modeling Toolkit and apply the bevel. Notice how it applies a bevel on the edges of my cube. In the pop-up, I can adjust the number of segments of my bevel. I almost always go with even numbers, 2, 4, or 6. Look around at objects around you and notice that even those with hard edges tend to have a bit of a bevel on them. Now let's move on to the cone. For the cone, I'm going to go into component mode, edge mode to be specific, and I'm going to select the edges at the base of the cone, and I will put a bevel on it. This is generally how you'll use the bevel tool. You'll select the edges you want to bevel, and then you'll apply it. And once again, I can make some fine-tune adjustments to the bevel till I get it to the point that I want it. Bevels are nice because not only do they give a little bit more of a sense of realism to your objects, they also catch the light in an appealing way. Let's take a look at a practical use of the bevel. Here's the table I made in the previous video. I constructed it entirely of polygon cubes, and then I used the Combine button in the Modeling Toolkit. With the table selected, I will use the bevel, and I'll make some quick adjustments. Now that the bevel has been applied to the table, it has more of a sense of realism, as well as the edges catching the light in a more appealing way. We'll now move on to Bridge, which can also be found under Components in the Modeling Toolkit. Here I have 2 polygon planes, but bridging only works on a single object. So under Mesh, I will use Combine to make the 2 polygon planes into a single object. Now that it is a single object, I will go to Edge mode and select 2 edges. And then when I click Bridge, it bridges the 2 edges together. I can even select multiple edges and bridge them at once. Let's take a look at a few more examples. Going back to object mode, I'm going to take my object that's created from planes and I'll select the cube and I will combine them. Notice that if I select an edge at the base of the cube and then one at the plane, the bridge tool will not work. I will get an error message. I'm going to switch to my top view and I'm going to select and delete some of the faces. Take note of the faces I currently have selected. I'm going to delete them, and now I can select the edges and bridge them. I'll select the ones at the base of the cube and the opening on the plane. Notice that I can also add divisions in the pop-up. Bridging provides a convenient way to join two polygon primitives seamlessly to make more complicated forms. I'm now going to connect this cylinder. I first combine the two meshes by deleting 4 of these polygon faces. I will have 8 edges. My cylinder has 8 sides. I'm going to delete the caps. And now I can bridge the 8 sides of my cylinder to the opening of 8 sides or edges on the original mesh. I'll add some divisions. Notice that there are some other attributes such as twist that will also help you refine the blend. If you think creatively, you can actually get some very interesting blends. Notice how I use this torus to create a bend in this pipe. The workflow of using the blend tool is very easy, and yet it's a very powerful technique for creating complicated forms. Using bridging, you can create complicated objects such as bicycles, or even an entire character. The last tool that we'll look at is the Add Divisions. This is a very simple one. Here I have 2 cubes. In an earlier video, we looked at Mesh Smooth. Smoothing adds geometry and also softens the form. Add Divisions, on the other hand, adds more resolution to the mesh, but doesn't actually change the appearance of our cube. Adding divisions simply gives me more geometry I can work with later. So that does it for the components section of the modeling toolkit. In the next video, we'll look at the tools. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.